Building a dynasty in sports is one of those things that separates the good from the greats. And just looking at a sport like basketball, you can look at the likes of the Lakers team of the 1980s with Magic Johnson, or the Chicago Bulls of the 90s with Michael Jordan. And even in solo sports like tennis, golf, you can look at the likes of Tiger Woods and Roger Federer as true examples of what domination really looks like. In football, however, especially when compared to the examples I just listed, true domination doesn't last for periods spanning as long as a decade. Instead, dynasties in football are usually the result of a few key factors lining up, a confluence of factors lining up to allow a team to put itself well above the rest of the competition for a period of 3 to 4 years. Think of how in the late 80s and early 90s the appointment of Arrigo Sacchi coincided with the emergence of Maldini and Costa Curta and the arrival of three Dutch superstars in Ruud Gullit, Frank Rijkaard and Marco van Basten to create one of the best teams of the 20th century. Likewise, when going back just 10 years to Pep Guardiola's Barcelona side, it might be hard to look at that team as anything other than just destined for greatness. But in fact, that team benefited from the leadership of a young man who would go on to become one of the greatest managers of all time, even if he was a risky appointment at the time. The simultaneous emergence of Sergio Busquets and Lionel Messi from the academy, and both Xavi and Iniesta entering their primes after several years of being reasonably serviceable players for the club. So today we look at a dynasty from more recent times that has yet to receive the acclaim and recognition that it inevitably will when the dust has truly settled. Step 1. Get a visionary into the club. The very first thing that needs to be done to kickstart a team into domination is the arrival of a bold visionary who elevates the standards at the club and raises the bar for success far beyond the rest of the competition. The best example I can think of is the great Bill Shankly and his Liverpool side of the 60s and 70s. The club Shankly joined was a regular in the English second division that had atrocious training facilities and a dilapidated playing ground, and had been clinging on to the success of the club once upon a time. Within 5 years, Shankly won Liverpool their first league title in 17 years, campaigned to have Anfield developed, and oversaw the renovation of Melwood to a world-class standard compared to the sorry wilderness he had arrived to. He also forged an unbreakable bond between those representing the club on the pitch and those representing the club in the stands. But most importantly, Shankly introduced a cultural revolution at the club that raised the bar for performance at the club forever and left a blueprint for success for anyone that followed him. In the decade following his retirement, Liverpool won 22 trophies and pulled away as the biggest club in the country. During this step in the process, it's absolutely crucial that the visionary has a great deal of power and influence at the club. If the visionary is a player, success will be more fleeting than if the visionary is a manager. If the visionary is a manager, success will be more fleeting than if the visionary is a director or a chairman. And if the visionary is a director or a chairman, success will still be more fleeting than if the visionary is an owner. So who played this crucial role in Real Madrid's dynasty of 2014 to 2018? Well, none other than Mr. President himself, Florentino Perez. As chronicled in a video I did about how Jose Mourinho ended Barcelona's reign of terror, Florentino Perez's return to Real Madrid did not immediately signal a return to overwhelming success for the club. Instead, Perez spent his first couple of years after being re-elected as president buying a combination of young superstars and superstars in the making such as Karim Benzema, Cristiano Ronaldo and Angel Di Maria, and experienced role players like Xabi Alonso and Ricardo Carvalho. This transfer strategy, which has actually continued even after the end of the dynasty, basically allowed Real Madrid to build a team full of world-class players all around the pitch in almost every position that would peak right around the same time. In my opinion, this strategy was evidence of Perez learning from the mistakes of his first term as president between 2000 and 2006, where he very rarely signed any players below the age of 25 and instead gambled on ready-made stars to bring the club success. This ultimately failed as the team featured too many players who had had their footballing education elsewhere and arrived at the Bernabeu in many ways as old dogs who couldn't be taught new tricks. Perez, as we'll see very soon, was also quick to reinstate and bring in people who reinstated the club's ethos and culture to create the perfect environment for success. Step 2. Return to the club's values, or create them yourself. The next thing you're going to want to do is to take this club that you're in the process of reviving or even reinvigorating and instill the club values that the club stands for. And if those are not exactly the most obvious, that means you're probably going to have to create them yourself. When Cruyff was appointed by Barcelona in 1988, he installed the philosophy of bold, elegant football above all else. When Wenger joined Arsenal in 1997, he got rid of the drinking culture and introduced sports science into the club and the country. And when Roman Abramovich became Chelsea's owner in 2003, he quickly established the club as one that was synonymous with success at all costs, both figuratively and literally. With a clean slate from his first term of presidency, which ended on a low note following the ultimately unsuccessful Galactico policy, Florentino Perez had the chance to actually do things right this time and carefully curate an atmosphere built for success. To really understand how Perez went about this, we truly have to understand what Real Madrid is, what they stand for, and how they're viewed by not just Spain, but the footballing world as a whole. Real Madrid, as far as most people are concerned, are the club of the Spanish aristocracy, based in the Spanish capital, named literally in English, Royal Madrid. They embody the values of pure domination and a better than sort of mentality. And as such, they represent class, inherent superiority, and relentless domination. This is exemplified by everything that the club has done throughout its history and continues to do today. Real Madrid is the club that every single aspiring superstar, not player but superstar, seeks to end their journey at. That's the final destination. Essentially, no manager, not even the greatest ones that have brought trophy upon trophy for the club, is allowed to stay longer than a single season without bringing home any silverware. And the players that actually are privileged enough to wear the royal white of Real Madrid are not only expected to give their all until the final moments of the match, but they're expected to wear the club badge with a certain arrogance, a swagger, and a pride. Perez rectified the biggest blunder of his first term of office by strictly hiring proven world-class managers that would instantly raise the standard of performance and results. Although Manuel Pellegrini's appointment coincided with Perez regaining presidency, meaning he couldn't appoint his own coach to kick off his new era, Perez wasted no time getting rid of Pellegrini once his first season was complete. The man he would hire to replace Pellegrini would ultimately lay the foundation for the success that Real Madrid enjoyed for the rest of the decade. Jose Mourinho, coming off the back of a treble with Inter Milan, quickly managed to bring back the fear factor that Real Madrid were historically associated with and instilled a belief and determination in his players that really never left. Under Carlo Ancelotti, who followed after Mourinho, Real Madrid were once again the personification of swagger both on the pitch and off it. During his first season, Real Madrid entered their wait for La Decima, and with that victory over Atletico Madrid in Lisbon, Ancelotti had begun what would become the greatest period of domination in modern football history. Ancelotti was then replaced by Rafael Benitez after going trophyless in his second season, despite Real scoring 162 goals and missing out on silverware only at the very end of the season. Now, this is purely speculation on my part, but I'm genuinely of the belief that Rafa Benitez was brought in for the sole purpose of reinstilling that hard work ethic, that discipline, and the structure that had slowly just evaporated since Mourinho's last season at the club. And the reason I actually say this is because from the day that Zidane headbutted Materazzi in the 2006 World Cup final and joined Real Madrid in a non-playing capacity, he had been groomed to, at some point, one day, to take over as Real Madrid manager. And I think in the distant future, Zidane will probably become Real Madrid's president at some point. Step 3. Make hay while the sun shines. Finally, here comes the easy part. The very last thing that you need to do to trigger the beginning of a dynasty or prolong the continued success of the dynasty is the concentrated capitalization on the situation at hand. Now that you've got the unifying vision that everyone believes in, the club is back to its roots. The only thing that needs to happen now is that you win as much as humanly possible before you need to rebuild again. In the summer of 1999, after winning English football's first and only treble to date, Manchester United signed 5 players worth a total of £17 million, which was a decent sum of money those days. More crucially, they let absolutely no key players leave and let go 4 players for a total of £1.75 million, with those 4 going to Blackpool, Blackburn, Port Vale and Viking Stavanger in Norway respectively. The next year, United made no signings but once again let only non-essential players leave, with the 35-year-old Teddy Sheringham being the biggest departure. By preserving not just the core of his squad, but the role players as well, Ferguson ensured that he was able to capitalize on the squad he'd been building for 5 or 6 years, peaking around the same time. Between 99 and 01, Man United won 3 straight league titles, an FA Cup, a Champions League, and an Intercontinental Cup. After Benitez was sacked midway through the 2015-16 season, he was replaced by the knight in shining armor, Zinedine Zidane. Under Zidane, the true visionary of Real's 5-year dynasty, Real Madrid were class personified, and between 2016 and 18, the team exemplified every single quality that Real Madrid is associated with. Zidane's team featured experienced world-class players all around the pitch and never knew when or even how to accept defeat, let alone all-out failure. These years featured 3 different versions of Zidane's understanding of his team, but what remained was the core and the supporting cast that everyone knew was lethal. In 2015-16, we had the pragmatic Real, with Bale in his prime and Casemiro adding steel to the midfield. In 2016-17, we had free-flowing Real Madrid, with Isco breaking into the team as a floating 10 and Ronaldo becoming an expert poacher. And then in 2017-18, we had Zidane's team on its last legs, but with no shortage of players who came up big time after time to come away with the result. In those 3 years, Real Madrid won 3 straight Champions Leagues, 1 Liga, 1 Spanish Super Cup, 2 UEFA Super Cups, and 2 Club World Cups. While it would ultimately be the departure of Ronaldo immediately after the 2018 Champions League final that signaled the end of this era at the club, it was keeping together the core of this incredibly gifted squad that allowed Real Madrid to create what, in my opinion, remains the greatest dynasty of this century so far. Okay, we have finally reached the end of the video. I really hope everyone enjoyed that. I hope you also grew in your knowledge as I did whilst researching this video, because oftentimes as we witness greatness, we don't really appreciate the little ingredients, the key steps and the incremental movements towards that culmination, those 3 or 4 years where a team, a club is just winning everything and just so overwhelmingly dominant. But that is the end of the video. Tell me what you thought. Do you really think, do you agree with me that Real Madrid is possibly the best dynasty of this century and possibly underrated just because they still have that little novelty about them? It's only been about 4 or 5 years since they were really at the peak of their powers. But let me know what you think. What other dynasties do you think are worthy of the dynasty tag to begin with? And which other videos, which other great teams in the past would you like to see me make a video about? Make sure you leave a like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe, and don't forget to share this video. That's all from me, and peace.